means you're putting the cover on crooked. I spun this thing and it went through each gear, rotating in the proper direction. There's an arrow on the seal and I wrote one on the case. I shift into first, then gently back into neutral, and in the second. Third. Okay, you have to turn quick enough to get it to go. Third. Fourth. Fifth. Now I can't go any higher, so I'm definitely in fifth. Fourth. Third. Second. Neutral. First. And I can't go any lower than first. Back into neutral. The one area you want to watch out for is there's a dowel pin that mounts the transmission to the motor, and you don't want silicone there. Right away, put it on only one surface, surround all bolt holes, but do not put sealant in the holes, because what happens is if the bolt goes through, it can actually cause it to crack as it forces the sealant against walls, or not tighten properly. For that, we're going to use the Loctite medium strength. Finally, we're going to assemble the parts, and after we assemble them, it says we're going to allow it to dry for 1 hour, then retighten a quarter to a half turn. So basically, we're going to put it on until a little bit of sealant just starts to come out and squeeze between it, and then it's going to be allowed to dry. That allows this to form like a rubberized seal of a certain thickness. That seems pretty good. I had to work at that a little bit. A little more, it felt like this time, possibly because I maybe should have applied a little more grease. My screws, I'm going to apply a little bit of Loctite to them. I can rotate a little bit. There. So that's out. And that's this little tiny part. You might want to take some masking tape and just tape it. So I actually installed this part backwards. It didn't affect anything, but it needs to go the opposite way. Take the little ball, which was in here, in the hole, like that. Frame goes in next. And we're going to put Loctite on it, and it's going to go in like that. Okay, all the bolts are in. What I did is I zapped them in gently with the air gun, went around, tightened them by hand, made a second pass, made a third pass to check for snugness. As you're tightening some, and you come around, some will be a little loose as the others are doing more of the load. So you get them even, and I snug that up. Very critical to use the Loctite 242 medium strength because the book only calls for about 6.5 foot-pounds of force on those. I Honda Moly 60 paste. This means that it contains 60% molybdenum disulfite paste. Coat metal surfaces with a long-lasting film. Lubricate bearings, gears, and all sliding metal. There's grease in here, and that it probably wasn't put together dry. It's just that it dried out eventually because the grease gets all spun against the sides. I'm not positive, it's hard to tell because according to the book, this clearly has rust on it. So it needs to be wiped down. I have some sandpaper here, it's very fine, 600 grit. To make it easy to reinstall the transmission, sand and grease and clean your dowel pins. Use the brush to coat all the splines evenly with grease, but don't put excess on because it can come off and end up getting on the clutch. The dowel pins are now lubed, and our next step will be to put the transmission into place. Okay, I just felt it go in. I used anti-seize on these 3 Allen bolts because this wire is very important because it's the ground wire for the ABS. Now this, you don't want to forget to tighten that. Tighten these bolts up too. Anti-seize basically is graphite and oil. Get this at any auto store. It's the Permatex brand. The difficult part of this is getting the wiring correct. We're back to the picture taken with the laptop. So when you do this operation, very important to take pictures of all the wiring, the ABS units, that kind of thing.
By not cleaning the swing arm and leaving the dirt, it helps provide a guide as to where wires and certain parts need to go. The ABS grounding wire is very important. If it's damaged, repair it. If it doesn't get a good ground, it will set a fault code and disable the ABS. Remember, this video is a guided tour. It's an overview of a lot of different things. If you're just lubing the final drive unit, you don't have to take all this stuff off. If you're lubing the clutch splines, you're better off using the quick method where you leave the transmission on the bike. You only pull it back about 1 inch. You get in there with a long paintbrush and you brush the spline, brush the grease onto it, and you shove it back together. It's much quicker. This is something where it really shows you everything, hopefully more than what most people will ever need to do. No transmission oil. It's easy once you get going in this project to think, I'm going to burn right through this thing. I'm not going to take time labeling things that won't even be together long enough to need labels. But you'll penalize yourself in the second half of the game when it's time to put it back together. And the longer it's apart, the harder it will be to remember where things go. Good news, bad news. The bad news is these splines are badly worn. The good news is because this final drive unit is used on much more powerful motorcycles like the K100 or K1100, there's a lot of tolerance for wear because the parts are overkill on the K75. Same thing with the transmission. DIY, do it yourself. This cheap, horrible grease should never be put on your BMW. It's a shame that anyone uses this, and this is why you do it yourself. This grease is so bad that Simple Green Degreaser does nothing to it. I had to put brake cleaner and scrub it to get it off the sheet. So treat your bike to some awesome Honda Moly 60 or other top quality grease. You know what happens when you put this Honda Moly 60 on your final drive unit? It says, this stuff's like chocolate. If your final drive could talk, it would tell you, treat me well and I'll treat you good. We'll have many great adventures together. We won't have any breakdowns or expensive repairs.
You hear the brake rubbing? But listen to the metal in the shaft. It's a lot quieter. It's not this hard metallic clanking sound.
In my opinion, I believe these spline lubes were simply designed to bring in extra money for the dealer. Unfortunately, they can end up ruining a perfectly good bike. The benefit of doing these repairs isn't just preserving the life of the parts, but it's also to make the bike fun and enjoyable to shift and drive. Before I did this, my bike had fallen into a state of disrepair and I didn't even like driving it anymore. After, it was like a whole nother bike. Well, another day, another video. 6.5 years ago, I was new to the BMW community. I want to thank everyone for the encouragement, great conversations, and tech articles that helped keep me and my bike going. And above all, God. And for those about to put your K75 in first gear, I take my hat off to you and I salute you. Thanks for watching my video. I hope you have many safe and enjoyable adventures on your K motorcycle. Farewell. And be sure to keep an eye out for my next video.